Some trips end when you come home. Others follow you back, and never let go. Our class trip wasn't to a museum or a park. It was to an abandoned estate, miles outside the city, crumbling at the edge of a forest no one ever entered. Even the bus driver refused to take us all the way up the long, cracked driveway. He dropped us at the rusted gates and muttered something under his breath before speeding off, like he was glad to be rid of us. The estate loomed at the top of the hill, its silhouette jagged against the gray sky. The walls leaned as if the house itself was tired of standing, sagging inward like broken ribs. Ivy had swallowed half the facade, but here and there the stone showed through, blackened by something that wasn't just rot or age. The windows weren't merely broken, they were voids. Black holes, gaping wide, each one seeming to watch us approach. I remember thinking it didn't look like a house at all. It looked like a husk. Something hollowed out, waiting for something. Or someone to crawl back inside. The closer we got, the heavier the air became. It reeked of damp earth and something metallic, faint but sharp, like rust or blood. Even the ground seemed wrong, mud sucked at our shoes though it hadn't rained for days, and the trees at the property's edge leaned toward the estate as though reaching for it. The teachers called it educational, mumbling about history and architecture, but none of us believed them. This wasn't a lesson. It was a test. And we all felt it, the dread crawling under our skin as the gates groaned open, the kind of sound that didn't just hurt your ears but seemed to sink into your bones. The caretaker was waiting just inside the gate. At first, we thought he was part of the act, some hired character to make the tour spookier. But the longer he stood there, the more wrong he seemed. His body was twisted, bent with age or something worse, his head cocked at a strange angle as though it had once been broken and healed badly. His eyes were clouded, a milky gray, yet somehow sharper than any gaze I'd ever felt. He didn't greet the teachers. He didn't greet us. He just shuffled forward, his limp dragging one foot in the dirt, and produced a wicker basket filled with candle stubs. Not fresh, clean ones, old, wax-crusted stubs, their wicks brittle and blackened, as though they had been burned before. As though they had already belonged to someone else. One by one, he pressed them into our hands. The wax was cold, damp, and tacky, clinging to our skin like it didn't want to let go. A few kids laughed nervously, asking why we couldn't use flashlights. The caretaker's lips twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No light but fire," he rasped, his voice brittle as dry leaves crumbling. "No fire but flame." We thought it was nonsense until he leaned closer, his breath sour and cold. "Stay together," he said, louder now, his voice shaking. "And if you hear footsteps that don't belong to you." His head twitched. His milky eyes swept across us. "Don't turn around." A ripple of unease passed through us, but we covered it with laughter, the way kids do when they're scared. The teachers chuckled too, brushing it off as folklore. "Just part of the old man's theatrics," one said. But the caretaker didn't laugh. He didn't move. He just kept staring. And I swear, when his eyes settled on me, there was something in them that wasn't pity. It was recognition. Inside, the estate was worse than it looked from outside. The wallpaper didn't just peel, it hung in long, curling strips that swayed even when the air was still, like skin dangling from a corpse. The wood beneath our feet sagged with every step, moaning low, as if the house itself was tired of holding us. Cold drafts slid across the back of our necks, never from the same direction twice. They carried a faint stink, mold, rot, and something coppery that made our throats tighten. We shuffled from room to room, our candle stubs flickering weakly, and the teachers tried their best to sound cheerful. But the more we explored, the more obvious it became, the house didn't just feel abandoned. It felt occupied. Every shadow seemed too deep, every hallway too long, as though someone, or something, was watching us from just beyond the circle of light. Then we came to it. The door. It was iron-bound, its wood black with age, heavy chains looped across it like ribs holding a chest closed. The lock was thick, rust-bitten, but solid. Unlike everything else in the house, it was untouched by time. A few kids jeered nervously, trying to mask their unease. One boy kicked it, the bang rattling the chains. We all expected it to end there, a hollow clang, a laugh, the group moving on. But the sound didn't stop. It went on and on, reverberating far too long, as if the house were hollow, or endless. It echoed back down the hallways from directions it shouldn't have been able to. Then, when silence finally fell, another sound answered. A knock. From the other side. Soft at first. Then louder. Then a second knock. Then a third. Until the door shuddered against its chains, as if something inside was desperate to get out. The teachers barked for us to move along, their voices trembling beneath forced authority. But as we hurried past, I swear I saw the chains shift. Not with the knock, but as if they were straining to keep themselves in place. It began subtly. A missing voice in the chorus of nervous chatter. A gap in the crowd that shouldn't have been there. When we turned, she was gone. One of the girls who had been trailing at the back, just gone. The teachers froze, their eyes darting from shadow to shadow. We doubled back, candles held high, calling her name into the dark. Her stub lay on the floor in the middle of the hallway. The wick was snuffed, but the wax was still warm. Almost soft. Like it had been burning only moments ago. Somebody whispered that she must have wandered off. But how far could she have gone in silence? We'd heard no footsteps. No cry. No sound at all. We pressed on, the group huddled tighter now, our candles trembling in our hands. Every corner we turned seemed wrong, like the house was shifting, stretching itself around us. The wallpaper's peeling strips curled like reaching fingers. The shadows between the flickers of light seemed thicker, slower, as though something was breathing with us. Then it happened again. One boy, walking just ahead of me, vanished. No warning. No scream. He was there one blink, his candle glow bobbing faintly, and the next blink, gone. The corridor where he'd stood was empty. His candle stub rolled across the floor, leaving smears of half-melted wax like frantic claw marks. This time, I swear I heard something. Not a scream. Not footsteps. A wet, sucking sound, as though something had swallowed him whole. The teachers shouted for calm, their faces drained of all color, but their voices cracked like breaking glass. Their words weren't orders anymore. They were pleas. That was when I realized, whatever was in this house wasn't picking us at random. It was choosing. And we weren't on a tour anymore. We were being hunted. Panic cracked through the group like lightning. Kids screamed, candles wavered, wax spilled hot across our fingers as we stumbled blindly through the corridors. But the house wouldn't let us leave. Hallways bent back on themselves, staircases doubled into loops, and doors led to the same rooms we'd just escaped. It was as if the estate were folding in, reshaping itself around us, a maze that wanted to keep us trapped. That was when we heard them. The footsteps. At first, one or two, measured, heavy, deliberate. But soon, more joined, multiplying until the halls shook with a chorus of shuffling, dragging steps. They didn't match ours. They were always just behind, no matter how fast we ran or how sharp we turned. The sound grew louder, closer, until it wasn't just steps anymore. It was breath. Wet, rasping, like lungs filled with water. Some kids sobbed openly, others clutched at the teachers, begging them to make it stop. But the teachers, they were worse than useless. Their faces had gone ashen, lips trembling, eyes wide with something far beyond fear. They whispered to each other in frantic, broken pieces. Not again, not again, we should have said no, we never should have brought them here. That's when it struck me. This wasn't an accident. The teachers knew. And the house, whatever lived inside it, had been waiting. We stumbled through twisting halls until at last, we were back where it began, the chained door. Only now, the chains weren't binding it shut. They lay scattered across the floor like shed skin, snapped and curled, still quivering as if they'd been torn apart moments before. The door was open. A wide, gaping blackness stretched beyond it, deeper than night, darker than the absence of light. It wasn't a room, it was a throat. A void waiting to swallow us whole. The caretaker's words screamed in my skull, "Don't turn around." The footsteps stopped. Silence fell so heavy it pressed into my ears, making them ring. I felt breath on the back of my neck, humid, sour, too close. The flame of my candle bent backward as though pulled by something standing right behind me. I should have kept walking. I should have kept my eyes forward. But I couldn't. I turned. And there they were. Our missing classmates stood in the glow of our trembling candles. Only they weren't themselves anymore. Their skin had gone pale, waxy, translucent in places where the light passed through. Their faces sagged, dripping as though melting in invisible heat. Candle wax streamed down their cheeks in thick rivulets, hardening into grotesque ridges along their throats and arms. Their eyes were hollow pits of flickering fire. Their mouths hung open, whispering our names in perfect unison. Drawn out, broken syllables that cracked and bled through the air like dying breath. Some of them reached out. Their hands weren't hands anymore but warped stubs of wax, dripping, reforming, stretching as though desperate to pull us into their burning hollow bodies. The teachers dropped their candles and ran. A few kids followed, but most of us froze, paralyzed as the wax figures lurched closer, the heat rolling off them suffocating, their whispers hammering into our skulls. And just as their fingers brushed my arm, the blackness of the door surged forward like a tide. It wasn't emptiness, it was hunger. A mouth yawning wide, sucking us in. The last thing I saw before the candle guttered out was the floor writhing like liquid wax, pulling at our feet, melting us into it, body by body, flame by flame. The school doesn't talk about the trip anymore. No assemblies, no memorials. The missing students are never mentioned by name. It's as if they never existed, their desks quietly emptied, their photos removed from the class boards. When I tried to bring it up once, a teacher's face hardened and she hissed, "Don't. The estate is gone now. Burned to the ground." The official report says, structural collapse, that the floors gave way, trapping the others inside. Nothing about the chains, or the wax, or the shadows that moved on their own. Nothing about the caretaker. Nothing about the footsteps. But the fire didn't erase it. I know that now. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm walking home, I hear them. The footsteps. Slow, heavy, just out of sync with mine, as though something is trying to mimic the rhythm but can't quite get it right. The sound follows me through empty streets, even when I break into a run. I've started seeing shadows that don't belong. They stretch too long, bending at angles that make no sense, reaching across the pavement toward me. When I glance over my shoulder, there's no one there, but in the corner of my eye, I catch shapes, flickering, wavering, like candle flames fighting against the dark. And sometimes, in windows or mirrors, I see faces. Not whole. Not human. Half-melted, sagging, with hollow eyes glowing faintly like dying embers. Last week, when I lit a candle during a blackout, the flame whispered. A voice I recognized. A classmate we lost that night. She said my name, stretching it thin and broken, just like in the house. I blew it out immediately. But when the room went dark, the smell of hot wax lingered. The teachers might pretend it never happened. The school might bury it. But I know the truth, the estate didn't just burn down. It burned through us. The fire spread into us, carrying pieces of that place with it. And I think the footsteps are getting closer. Sooner or later, I'll have to stop walking. And when I do, I know I won't be walking alone.